died in her jail cell after spending endless days in solitary confinement. Her death sparked an inquest and a scathing coroner's report, one that firmly stated segregation should be scaled back.
Is cruel and unusual punishment.
And now, two BC-based rights groups are suing the federal government over the use of solitary confinement.
Long-term indefinite solitary confinement is torture.
The groups argue it's unconstitutional, leads to suicide, and is discriminatory. In Canada, solitary can last up to 23 hours a day for an undetermined length. Unlike many institutions in the U.S., its use here is on the rise.
Segregation has grown dramatically for the use of, with women. There's a disproportionate rate of segregation for Aboriginal versus non-Aboriginal offenders.
But the federal government has repeatedly rejected abolishing or limiting the practice, a stance reiterated today. In a statement, a spokesperson for the Public Safety Minister said, Correctional Service Canada uses all of its tools to make sure the correction system actually corrects criminal behavior, including the use of segregation. It's estimated more than 1,800 people are in solitary confinement at any given time. The federal government is expected to respond to the lawsuit by February. But Lisa, a trial is not likely till 2016.
We have a lot more information tonight on exactly what Canadian forces are up against in Iraq. In a surprisingly candid briefing, the top generals revealed that special forces assisting the Iraqi army have come under attack. The snipers also ended up in a firefight with ISIS during a visit to the front lines. Not exactly the airstrike operation Canadians have been led to believe. CTV's Omar Sachedina has the details.
Canadian Special Forces identified ISIS targets pounded in this newly released video. Coalition jets are getting help from Canadian Special Ops, who are using lasers on the ground to actively light up strike zones. Canada's top military brass declared today that has helped halt the terror group's advance in Iraq.
We have disrupted their freedom of maneuver, their command and control capabilities, and limited their ability to carry out large-scale operations.
But the military warns defeating ISIS will take years because it still controls so much territory.
You're not talking about, some B or C team here of insurgents. These guys are pretty well trained.
To help take them on, 69 Canadian Special Operations soldiers are training and advising Iraqi security forces. Today, senior military officials revealed that in the past week, during one of those sessions on the front lines, ISIS militants attacked them.
They came under immediate and effective mortar and machine gun fire.
The Canadians retaliated using sniper fire.
This is the first time that this has happened since our arrival, and our reaction is wholly consistent with the inherent right of self-defense.
The battle exposes the danger to Canadian troops, but the military says only 20% of Special Forces training happens on the front lines and insists the risk is low.
Today's openness about military tactics has surprised many observers who believe it's a sign the government will likely move to extend Canada's 6-month mission, Lisa.
All right, we'll watch for that. Omar Sachedina in Ottawa tonight. The war against ISIS is as unpredictable as its fighters are difficult to identify. In Australia, where it's already Tuesday morning, officials there have just raised the terrorism threat level against police to high. And following the massacre in Paris, security in that country remains unprecedented. This is the city's largest airport. Troops deployed AK-47s out. It's the same across Europe because of a massive backlash in the Muslim world over the Charlie Hebdo cartoons. Hundreds of thousands of Muslims gathered today in Chechnya to announce supporters of the Je suis Charlie movement. They see the cartoons as an international insult to Islam. No Charlies in Afghanistan either. There were instead deadly clashes in 10 cities, including across Pakistan. And in Iran, there was instead only anger over what they see as the open ridicule of their most holy figure. Iraq released new oil production numbers today. In December, it pumped out a record 4 million barrels a day, helping to trigger another drop in oil prices. The cost of crude fell $1.17 today, closing at $47.52. In this country, the impact is intense. In Fort McMurray, Alberta, home of the oil sands. The city has seen such boom times in recent years, it was nicknamed Fort McMoney, until the free-falling oil prices started hitting home. CTV's Alberta Bureau Chief Janet Dirks is in Fort McMurray tonight.
At this local diner, there's only one topic of conversation.
Everybody's scared for their jobs.
They all work in the oil sands at this table for private contractors hired by big oil companies.
For right now, we were told we were okay. And in a month from now, we don't know.
The restaurant's owner checks the price of oil every day.
Definitely affects everybody in town.
76,000 people live in Fort McMurray. The vast majority make their money off the oil sands. Incomes are high, and so is the cost of living. This 1,400 square foot house is listed at $739,000. That's about the average in Fort Mac. A similar house in Calgary would sell for at least $200,000 less. But in the last 6 months, the listing price has dropped by $20,000.
Some people now, there is a few people considering selling right now before it gets worse, not thinking that it's going to come back up.
Pastor Robert Parmenter has lived in Fort McMurray for 31 years and has seen the booms and the busts.
We saw people that walked away from the homes, just turned the homes back over to the bank.
Most residents say they're not at that stage yet. Nearly 2 million barrels of oil are produced in the region every day. But new projects have been put on hold or canceled, and jobs are already being cut.
What is being impacted is the future growth for future oil sands development.
No one can say when the price of oil will reach bottom, but this union leader, a resident here for 18 years, says the community is resilient.
We're moving ahead as we always have. What that brings, if this continues to plummet down to $20 a barrel, I mean, we'll be maybe having a different conversation, and I'm not sure.
It's not just the permanent residents of Fort McMurray feeling the impact. As many as 60,000 oil field workers live outside the city in camps. Lisa?
All right, Janet Dirks in Fort McMurray tonight. Thank you, Janet. Time for a short break, but when we come back, the U.S. and Cuba take the first small step to change history.
I'm not against the changes, to improve the life of the people.
Anticipating the boom that could bring the Caribbean island into the 21st century. Oldest were 13. Were demonstrating against the removal of a playground when police started firing tear gas. 8 students were taken to hospital, and the officers in charge have been suspended. Groundwork for a new, closer relationship between Cuba and the U.S. will be laid this week. For decades, Cubans have been close to the world's biggest economy without any of the benefits. That's about to change. Talks will begin in Havana on Wednesday with the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State. That's the most senior diplomat to visit Cuba in 38 years. CTV's Richard Madden is in Havana tonight.
The island nation is on the cusp of another revolution, but this one is all about the economy. Top U.S. officials are meeting in Havana, where after 50 years of severed ties, the sanctions that crippled Cuba are slowly being dismantled. The doors America so completely shut are about to swing open.
We in America welcome this change. It'll be easier for us to come and be with these wonderful people in Cuba.
A diplomatic breakthrough that's welcome news for this cab driver.
I'm not against the changes, to improve the life of the people.
President Raul Castro is trying to move away from its old Soviet-style economy, long relying on help from Russia and Venezuela, and is now looking to the U.S. for investment.
We need to rediscover the United States again. United States people, because we haven't had a full contact with them since maybe 60 years ago.
How Cuba will transform is unclear. Many believe Castro will move slowly.
And there's a healthy skepticism of capitalism among the Cubans. And so my sense is they don't want a Starbucks on every corner.
Canada has maintained strong ties with Cuba, but these tourists from Montreal worry about Cuba's future.
Cuba has an old flair to it. When the Americans come here, they're going to Americanize this. They're going to have like McDonald's and Pizza Huts, and it'll lose its true flavor.
Many Cubans believe it's the kind of investment their country needs.
I think the revolution is changing for better.
Now, President Obama is expected to announce more details on this diplomatic thaw in tomorrow's State of the Union speech. And on Wednesday, a major visit here by the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State To many Cubans and Americans, it's more history in the making. Richard Adams, CTV News, Havana.
Now, Pope Francis helped broker that deal between Cuba and the U.S., and today we learned he will speak at the UN on his 3-day American tour. The Pope will meet U.S. President Barack Obama in Washington in September. He'll also go to New York and Philadelphia.
Gesto que me ha colpito tanto.
Now, Francis, who has a knack for making headlines, did it again today. He told reporters on his way back from the Philippines that good Catholics don't need to, quote, breed like rabbits. He said they should instead focus on, quote, responsible parenting. As we go to break, now would be a good time to get up and stretch your legs. New Canadian research with an urgent message. Stand up for your life. Literally. Facebook group accused of posting offensive comments about female classmates. Now Ryan Malay, the fourth-year student, has been suspended for belonging to the group that he outed. In an interview with the Halifax Chronicle Herald, he described one online posting as a targeted, hateful, sexualized, violent attack. The married father of 3 will appear before a discipline hearing tomorrow.
They've got to review the facts for each of the men to determine if they meet the professional requirements to graduate.
Malay says he never commented or posted in the group. He's now hired a lawyer to fight his suspension. Well, if you are watching this newscast sitting down, you might want to rethink your position. Tonight, more evidence from a Canadian review of hundreds of thousands of cases right around the world that prolonged periods on the couch or sitting down behind a desk can make you very, very sick. Now, if you're thinking rigorous daily exercise is the answer, CTV's medical specialist Avis Favreau has news for you.
A new study confirms many of us spend almost half our waking time sitting, and it's toxic to our health.
I think it's a call to action that we need to draw the awareness that sitting time is a health hazard.
A Canadian study reviewed data on over 800,000 people, confirming the more time we spend locked in a sitting position, the greater the risk of a variety of diseases.
Sitting times were associated with a higher risk of death from any cause, higher risk of heart attacks, higher risk of cancer.
What's more, the study says exercising before or after work isn't enough to counteract the effects of sitting. So the scientists are offering immediate solutions, suggesting we stand if we're watching TV, maybe even exercise during commercials. And at work, they say we should get up for 2 minutes every half an hour.
Often I will address emails while I'm standing or read.
Andrew Lipko is now part of a growing trend, working upright 4 to 5 hours a day.
It may seem daunting to stand your entire day, but the day really does go faster, I find. You have more energy.
You've actually got to think about too much sitting at work as an occupational health and safety issue.
And expect even more studies this year on the health benefits of standing, as scientists try to reposition our landscape to include less of this and more of this. Avis Favreau, CTV News, Toronto.
Taking the air out of an impressive victory. A team with a long history of scandals faces a new one on the road to the Super Bowl.